Aloha and welcome back to Sub FM. My name's Simon Hutchinson, and in the Sub FM podcast, I talk to people who can inspire and add to your experience of the sport. And in every episode, I talk to someone who's either done something incredible in SUP or who offers some learning and knowledge which adds something to your time on the water. This episode is brought to you in association with Starboard. Starboard has a history of board design, and you can listen to the creator of the brand himself in episode 71, where I talked to Sven Rasmussen. He started by entering the windsurfing market in 1994, and he innovated with his designs, and this led to the brand becoming market leader in only 10 years. Starboard got behind stand-up paddling really early and has supported the sport ever since. They've also focused on reducing their environmental impact while continuously improving and innovating with their boards and paddles to make them fit for the weekend warrior like me, as well as for the elite athletes like Fiona Wilde from episode number 26. And you can find out more about Starboard through their website, which is linked to in the show notes. You can catch up with SUP FM podcast on Instagram and Facebook, of course, but if you wanted to keep it old school, we've just relaunched our SUP FM email newsletter, which goes out weekly with a whole lot of value-added updates on future episodes, SUP news, starter packs, and added extras. And if you subscribe, then as a thank you, you also get our guide to our favourite apps for free. And you can subscribe by heading over to our website, supfmpodcast.com. This week I really enjoyed chatting with the Irish paddler Subowti, who is apparently also known as Dave Ludgate, and Dave comes from Cork on the south coast of Ireland. Cork is well known for its relaxed conversation, and it's close to the legendary Blarney Stone, which grants you the gift of eloquence or the gift of the gab. And so it was no surprise that this was a really relaxed chat, and it kind of felt like we were chatting in the pub. We talk about Ireland as a SUP destination, the stand-up paddle scene in general, and some of his favourite places, both locally and nationally, to paddle. Dave spent a huge amount of time on the water, and in addition to SUP, has been a long-time windsurfer, and he cares deeply about the water environment and has spent a huge amount of his time getting involved in clean-ups and organisations like Planet Patrol to clear plastics and make the water a better place. So here's someone who I'm really looking forward to having a pint of the black stuff with, Dave Ludgate, aka Subowti. Hey Dave, welcome to SUP FM.
Hi Simon, thanks for the invite. I'm honoured to be here with such an illustrious participant list that you have. It's a humbling experience, so thank you.
It's great to have you on, Dave. You're known as a leading supper from Ireland, as someone who's really got behind the clean-up of your local waters. But my first burning question would be why you're known as Subowti, and secondly, how did you get your start in SUP?
I was wondering when that question would come up. All right, so it's the name is entirely made up. It's actually an amalgamation of the names of the three most important women in my life, believe it or not. So I did it because I just wanted it to mean nothing, if you know what I mean, but it means a lot to me, but I wanted it to mean nothing out there. And then the fact that it's one of those words that can be pronounced a lot of different ways, and that I think that kind of engages people as well. I think actually in Spanish, I think it means your bow tie, which I didn't think about until I had set it up. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I just wanted it to kind of mean nothing really in a way.
Well, you're lucky it doesn't mean something very rude. I know that sometimes that's the risk. How did you get into SUP?
So I guess I've kind of been raised in the water more or less. My parents were big-time water people. My dad windsurfed. They sailed a lot before they had us, before they had to sell all their stuff. And we just, every summer, we were on the beach. So we didn't really take foreign holidays. We used to go to West Cork a lot. Even after school, I can remember on a hot day, Mum would be waiting with all the beach gear in the car and we'd be straight down to the beach. So yeah, I was pretty much raised in water. Then, in places like West Cork, I suppose I started getting into kind of surf bodyboarding, anything to do with the water, snorkeling, just in the water all day long. We had wetsuits that we nearly wore through by the end of the summer. So paddleboarding for me is relatively late, I suppose. When I was a teenager, I got into windsurfing, like my dad. And my first experience with paddleboarding then was around, I think it was 2009. I was at one of the windsurfing events, the Irish Slalom Series, in Bantry in West Cork, and on the second day of the competition there wasn't a puff of wind. I think someone commented that if a fish farted you would have seen the bubbles on the water. It was that calm. So obviously we couldn't race, but one of my friends, the organizer of the event, actually, Pierce from BigSurfShop.com, had brought down a few of these paddle boards, the original red paddle boards, as a demo. And we had a few fun races and kind of goofed around on it. And like, to be honest, I was a bit skeptical. I thought this is a bit of a fad. I'm not sure it's going to take off. But I like the idea of it as being kind of an alternative to windsurfing on the non-windy days. So I could still get my fix on the water. So I looked around on the kind of the used websites over here, and I found an old custom escape board. I think they're made in Cornwall, aren't they? And it was in bad condition. It was a 10'10" by 27 inches wide. It was shaped like an old longboard. Gel coat was all chipping off it. It was nasty, but it was for sale for a couple of £100. So I said, I'll get this. And I kind of got into it. You know, it had a big heavy aluminium paddle. So I started playing around in flat water, a little bit of waves. And then I suppose my big epiphany moment was in my old job. I moved to America in 2011, and the first year I was there, I lived in central Pennsylvania, which is, a 6-hour round trip to get to the coast. So I was thinking, God, how am I going to get my water sports fix here? So I started looking up SUP and found a lot of places. Actually, I was surprised. Rentals. So I got to kind of explore. I was over there on my own, more or less, living out of a hotel, but through rentals, I got to explore rivers, lakes, and then get to know people. And in the second year I was there, I moved to upstate New York in the kind of Adirondack region there in the national park. And that was the game changer for me. So I would hire boards and, go up through Lake George, and just to explore an area from the water, from me anyway, is just the best way to do it. And then paddleboarding came into its own in that, you're cruising along. All you hear is maybe a light splashing of the water off the board, but you can, you get the full extent of nature. When I was up there, I saw bald-headed eagles, things that I would never see here in Cork, and it was just magic. And then through that, I met a couple called Mike and Carla who ran Paddlehead Boards just south of Albany, New York, and they ran a paddle club every Tuesday night. So we'd all go for a paddle, and then we'd have a barbecue and a few beers, and got to meet a load of people, like-minded people that way. And, Mike and Carla's stoke for the sport was infectious, and it really rubbed off on me. And I kind of thought, I want to bring this back to Ireland, and I want to help spread a similar stoke as well. So when I returned to Ireland, I got into it big time then. I kind of, windsurfing took a backseat actually, and I kind of went through various boards and got involved in as much SUP as I could. So it was taking it out in waves, which is amazing. A little bit of racing. I'm not fast. I was never built for speed in any sport that I've ever done. But the exploring side of it was just magic for me, because I'd bring a snorkel with me and an anchor, and I'd anchor and just go snorkeling off it if the water was clear. Or my previous job, I used to travel around Ireland a lot as well, so I'd always have the inflatable in the back with me. And if I saw a body of water, this is the simplest thing about the beauty of SUP for me, is all you need is a body of water, and you're out, you're bored, your paddle, and you're gone. So I've really enjoyed it.
And that introduction up in upstate New York, seeing that fantastic landscape. So it sounds like that was the hook. It was the nature and the sociability thing. And certainly, you'd have both of those in spades in Ireland. So I do want to talk about your environmental efforts locally, and also about Cork as a supping destination. But first, It's your little bit, I think, for the Irish Tourist Board here. Could you tell us a bit in general about supping in Ireland? Because my guess is that in Ireland, like the rest of the world, you've seen a big growth in the sport over the last few years.
Yeah, huge. I mean, even when I returned in 2013 from America, I could see the growth then. Obviously, it's grown exponentially through the last, whatever it is, 18 months with lockdown and with I think every country has seen that. But yeah, it's what I loved about it was it's so inclusive was the biggest thing for me. I remember meeting someone that said, if you can stand on one leg, you can paddleboard. And they're right. It's, windsurfing and kite surfing, they're quite technical sports, water sports. To be able to get loads of people out on the water with a paddle and a board and obviously the accessories is just fantastic. Because as I say, I'm trying to share what I get out of it with everyone else. And it's, it's not a secret. There's not secret spots. I don't like any of that kind of stuff that, goes on in other water sports. It's the more the merrier. And, we get events here locally. I mean, I suppose I don't want to speak too much for the entire country. There are probably people better placed than me to talk about it. But, we have the Ocean to City race here in Cork Harbour as part of the Harbour Festival. And there's a paddleboarding race in it, which has been running for, I could get shot here now, but I think 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years. But it's for all paddle sports. So, you've kayaks, you've ocean kayaks, you sit on tops, you've currachs, you've rowing boats of all descriptions. I know nothing about rowing boats, but every different shape, size. And we all do it together. So Cork Harbour is great here. So Cork Harbour it's the second biggest natural harbour in the world. And when they run this race, they do it all together. So you're literally paddling along, and you could be passed by 10 people in a currach or a guy on a sit on top, and you'd have a chat while you're doing it. It's, as I say, speed was never my forte, so I like the social element of it more than anything else.
And SUP is generally quite democratic in that you can make it as difficult or as easy as you want. You can make it as adrenaline or not as you like. So let's just quickly talk a bit about the surf SUP scene, because it's the west coast there, isn't it, that tends to get the waves from autumn through to spring. Tell me how much you immerse yourself in that world.
Yeah, I suppose to be fair to the East Coast, they do get swell over there as well. I don't want to exclude them. So yeah, occasionally there is an easterly swell up, even in the Irish Sea. I've seen some great photos of lovely surfing up there. I mean, for me, surfing is, there's two things: catching a wave on whatever format you're on, and when you're windsurfing as well, it's just a feeling that I can't explain, and it's incomparable. It's something you do when you just want to do more and more. So, like, if there was a gun to my head and I had to give up all other types of paddleboarding, yeah, surfing would be the one for me. The problem is it's quite fickle, I suppose. Yourself, you get days where it closes out, or you're not in form and you keep falling off. But at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a bad day on the water. Like, for me, I wouldn't be going out in huge gnarly conditions. Shoulder high will do me. Anything below that, a couple of feet will do me. I'm just happy to catch a wave. As far as the scene goes, yeah, I mean, again, there's probably people better placed to talk about it than me, but there are competitions that they run up in Sligo and Mayo, which, again, like the windsurfing competitions we used to run, are very hard to organise, because you need the weather gods to play ball as well to mobilise all these people. But yeah, I mean, it's I suppose it's like SUP in a way. Any discipline. It's that it's very inclusive. Again, there's not a whole lot of elitism in it, which I love. When I windsurfed back in the mid-90s, there was a lot of elitism in this country, and I'd say maybe further afield, where it was all about what equipment you have and blah blah blah. Whereas SUP surfing, supping in general, is just about getting out on the water and having fun. They say the best person, the best surfer is the guy with the biggest smile on his face, and I love that's what it is for me. And yeah, as you say, the West Coast is magic. You can go anywhere on the West Coast. We get a prevailing southwesterly swell, and it's you'll get waves, and luckily the beaches are never that crowded. I haven't personally. I've never experienced any kind of localism or any grief on the water from prone surfers, from anyone. I'm sure maybe they've taught it a few times, but I've never been approached. I don't think I've done anything too stupid, and I like to think I'm quite aware of the advantages that a stand-up paddleboarder has over a prone surfer. Obviously, we can catch the wave earlier and we can see the set coming from further off. So if there are prone surfers out there, I like to let them have their share first and catch whatever I can afterwards.
Absolutely. And that's something that was, quite controversial, I guess, or something that was flagged as a particular danger. And it's nice to hear that around the prone surfers. It's something that unfortunately happens occasionally in spots around the UK. I'm probably the equivalent of the East Coast of Ireland surfer, because where I am, it's not the coasts of Devon and Cornwall, which get all of that lovely Atlantic swell. Here, everything has to be running in exactly the right direction, and that makes you even more appreciative of when the surf is right. And, good surf days have completely ruined my flat water paddles. I still go out and do it. But my God, yeah, I'm out at whatever time, at whatever temperature, if there's slightest suspicion of a swell. So you mentioned the race in Cork. Are there any other specialist SUP races? What's the racing scene like in Ireland?
I suppose relative to you guys in the UK, it wouldn't be that big at all. I'm open to correction on this, but there are a few races held nationally. There wouldn't be anything like a league or anything like that. I mean, I know people have tried even to start kind of just social races. Dublin would have obviously the biggest population and probably the biggest subpopulation with it. And I know they've kind of struggled to even get the social races going, to get people out on a Tuesday or whatever, which is a shame because, again, from a social point of view, it's great. But I've seen a few more coming up on Facebook now and stuff, which is great. So there's one in Waterford actually coming up soon, and there's one of the local rowing clubs here on the harbour is having it's kind of a kayak and rowing race. It's just kind of it's a charity fundraiser. But I asked, could paddleboarders come, and they said, yeah, look, there's a 5 kilometre kayak sit on kayak course. You can do that if you can keep up with the kayakers. I said, yeah, let's do it. Sounds great. So it's very much in its infancy. I mean, I know even from the windsurfing racing scene, even that's tricky as well, to get people to commit to weekends and then hope that the weather does its thing as well. So it is difficult. I think just the numbers, obviously, relatively speaking, to you guys in the UK are a lot smaller here as well. But there's some people out there who are very good. Some people hopefully will do very well out of it as well. So it's a shame if they don't get to showcase their abilities here.
Well, I've got a recruit potentially for you, Paul O'Donovan, the brothers who won the silver at Rio, and I think he won the gold in Tokyo. Yeah. He's a County Cork man, isn't he?
He is.
He gives very good interviews, and tell us a little bit about him, because he's quite a character.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, the two of them, so his brother, it's Gary, I believe. I hope I get that right now. Two characters, in fairness. I remember the Rio interviews, right? So they're from Skibbereen, which is down in West Cork. It's about an hour and a half from Cork. Lovely part of the world. They row on the Illan River there, and they have a phenomenal amount of top-class rowers come out of that rowing club. There must be something in the water down there. But these guys, obviously, they're now the best at what they do, but they are characters as well. They have that West Cork humour. I put my hands up. I've never met them. I don't know them from Adam, to be honest. But yeah, even the interviews, they're great. I remember after Rio, they got a few kind of promotional things as well, a few ads and stuff, which was great to push it. And look, they may as well make hay while they can out of it. But even Gary, I think, was on the team this year in Tokyo. He was maybe the third man, so if something happened to one of them, Gary would have stepped in. So he was that close to a gold medal himself. I don't know if they've ever tried stand-up paddleboarding, actually. That would be an interesting question to put to them. So
that's your task then
to recruit them.
But I mean, it certainly looks like Ireland and water sports generally it is on the up, and it's so good to hear that about SUP as well. So I guess the other sort of element of SUP, which I guess there is most opportunity for in the in your beautiful countryside is touring. Yeah, how much have you got out there, and what would be the main trips if people were going to come over and spend a weekend or a week in Ireland? What would be the best sort of locations to go out, would you say?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I mean, there isn't really. I mean, everywhere is the real simple answer, but obviously the coastline is amazing. The west coast, the east coast, even the north, and I haven't spent enough time in the north, which is probably even more spectacular again. But even the inland waterways, I find very interesting. Like, I live on the harbour here, and I love exploring the harbour. As I say, it's huge. There's a different thing to see every day. But also the rivers, I like. Again, I'll be Cork based here, and I have been. It's funny you mention it, because I have been researching as well. I'm probably going to try and put an article together on it. But the kind of the one-way expeditions, I love those. So you drive a car up to one end of the river and you paddle down to the car at the other end. So even, the River Bandon, which finishes up in Kinsale, is magic. You can spend a couple of hours paddling down and then finish up in Kinsale, which in itself is a great paddle location. I've done the River Lee here, which goes through the city pretty much from the ocean up to where you can walk sections of it nearly to the dam. The River Blackwater then, which is on the Cork Waterford border, is an amazing paddle. So, the history on these rivers as well, you can't go every couple of miles there's an old castle ruin or something, which has some kind of huge history to it. I'm not a history buff, but, it's fascinating from that point of view. But there is, I've been paddleboarding, since whatever it is, 2009. I'm only scratching the surface on it as well. We did a paddle last summer where we went around the old head of Kinsale and actually through the old head of Kinsale. So there's sea caves there that you can paddle all the way through. And it's just an amazing experience. You come out at the other end and there's a big sea stack in front of you with all the birds on it. It's just otherworldly. It's amazing. But I suppose, like that, and with the proliferation of SUP in worldwide, and the fact that you can buy boards nearly anywhere now, it's safety is a huge issue as well. That the coast, especially the west coast, because it is the open Atlantic, it can change very quickly. We had two people last summer went out off the west coast in just normal conditions, and they got caught in an offshore wind, and they actually spent the night clinging. They tied their boards together, which was great. They spent the night clinging to a lobster pot off the cliffs of Moher, off the islands out there, and were unbelievably lucky to be rescued the following day. So, there is that side to it too. I don't want to be all doom and gloom on it, but safety for me is huge. So, some of those paddles, those coastal paddles, I would say, go to a local school or a shop or something, a surf shop, and find out who would know when and where to go and who might even accompany on it. Or I know personally, I paddled for years and years and years, and I never got a lesson. And I think it was last year, 2 years ago, I decided to do the instructor course with the ASI. And with that, you get a Subowti lesson at the start. It's called. I did it with Paul Byrne here in Ireland, in Dublin, and I learned more in that hour session than I had in the previous, whatever it was, 10 years. Just, little things on paddle stroke and stuff were eye-openers, and obviously the safety side of it as well, and the rescue thing. I think everyone who goes out paddleboarding should know how to rescue someone out of the water. I think it would be great if we could somehow tie that in.
Definitely. Yeah, safety's a huge thing, and as you say, sometimes people look at it as the glum bit or the boring bit. Actually, it's a way to connect yourself to the water far more if you understand the conditions and what's happening at any particular time. And we've just done a whole load of episodes just before we kicked off this season. And I was telling someone earlier this week that of the 4 episodes, about ice ups and core skills, and, we had one in there about safety. Safety was the least downloaded by quite some degree, because obviously, I guess people think it's going to be a bit, do I? The other thing as well is the instruction element to it. So learning about tides, learning about offshore winds, planning and so on. I did a huge amount of learning during my instructor qualification, but me and Nick also put together a SUP safety course. And I learnt masses from just putting all of that together. I think it dials back to instructor stuff, which is the way that you really understand what you're doing is by teaching other people. And it's fabulously important. I think the other thing is the consideration that it'll never happen to me. And I'm pretty experienced, but I've been caught out once or twice, and it's not a happy place to be, is it?
No, and as I wrote in the article in the last SupMag UK, I've always been fascinated by water, but I started out being terrified by the ocean, and I still have that fear, because things change just in the drop of a hat, and you can never prepare for that unless you're in it. But all you can do is, and I'm probably a bit of a nerd on it, all you can do is, as you say, what you've done, read up about it, look on it, any courses that are there, there's plenty of stuff online, even just to learn about tides and water and what you think you might do if things go wrong.
It's all about being flexible and having a backup plan. So let's move on and talk about the environment, because you've talked about nature and your love for nature and that element of a hook which started you in SUP. Now, you've been really, really active in terms of the environmental aspect and clearing up elements round about you. Just tell us about how you started that.
Yeah, so as you say, I've always been kind of environmentally minded. I think I joined Surfers Against Sewage when I was 16, which is kind of funny because I don't think they had a presence in Ireland back in 1996. But, it's something that kind of always fascinated me. And then I've always loved sports, obviously water sports, that don't involve an engine, if that makes sense, that are kind of self-propelled, because I believe it does get you closer to nature. You tend not to disturb things as much when don't have a big roaring engine behind you. So the environmental and the cleaning up aspect kind of started maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago for me. I'm a member of my local cleanup group here in Blackrock, and we do monthly cleanups on the land, but on the walkways, the public walkways that are adjacent to the harbour. And then when I was getting into paddleboarding, I saw people like Lizzie Carr and Cal Major doing what they were doing back then, and I thought, Jesus, that's great, and what I was, I suppose selfishly, what I was looking for is a way of kind of prolonging my time on the water. As I say, there's never a bad day when you're on the water. So when I was out around the harbour, especially here, I started noticing floating debris a lot more. So then I was like, you know what, I'll just pick up some stuff and put it under the straps on the board or put it at my feet, and that kind of spiraled a little bit then. And I kind of thought, I could fill a basket here, so I started bringing out baskets with me, and with the help of Clean Coast as well, so a charity organisation here in Ireland. They've helped me along with kind of the equipment side of things. And then through social media, which I'm not a great fan of, but I had left social media entirely kind of 2014, 2015. But I set up the Subowti pages again to try and kind of just raise awareness around this and to promote our kind of waterways and coastline that we have over here, and get people out and then maybe raise the awareness about the litter side of things as well with Clean Coast. So set that up and contacted, it's the beauty of social media. I don't like it in general, but the beauty of it is you can contact people. Obviously, I'm here talking to you now because of social media, essentially, and I know we've been following each other for a while, so it's good to get to talk to you. So I set it up and I contacted people, and I met online very like-minded people and kind of got inspiration from that, and then met Andy from Fat Stick and Mark from North Coast Wetsuits, and they kind of, again, as I say, they were like-minded. They were into what I was doing themselves, so they saw an opportunity maybe in me as well, and they've helped me out. So again, it all prolongs my time on the water. So I've combined kind of the passion, the cleanup element, the environmental element, with my passion for paddleboarding, and it's been great. The response to it is great. I've kind of set myself that I try to keep it positive, even though I suppose it's a negative element, but, just to show cleaning up, not to start kind of preaching. I think there's no better way to turn people off than start preaching at them, or to be kind of negative, saying, you're doing this, whether it's a corporation or a government or a person or whatever, I've just tried to do it on the positive way. And it's been great. As I say, the feedback's been good. It's nice and laid back. It doesn't take up all of my time. I do have a day job as well, but it's been great. I mean, I love it around here because I'm 5 minutes from the water, so I can get on the river here and I can paddle up to the city. And even to see people looking over the bridges down into the water where they just thought it was a river, to see someone actually using it recreationally, and then look at him going, Jesus, that lunatic's picking up bottles and stuff as well. 99% of people think that I am probably a lunatic and don't think more of it. But, the 1% that go, maybe we should do something about stopping the stuff going into the river in the first place, is, that's all I want to do. Because, I've always said our monthly cleanups that we do here in Blackrock, we're scratching the surface. We clean an area next to the castle here, which is kind of a natural eddy for the river. So all of the stuff floats down from the city and gets caught there. We clean it every month, and every month we come back and it looks the exact same again. But it's, people see us doing it, and hopefully maybe some people will think differently about their actions or even their consumption as well. Like I have said that there are certain things we find that are kind of a deeper societal issue in terms of, alcohol cans and bottles, or even worse again, drug paraphernalia. And that's a different ballgame altogether. But the Coke bottles, the burger wrappers, all of these things, they drive me nuts. I try not to dwell on it because, you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. But as I say, it's helped to raise the awareness, and it's opened up doors for me in meeting like-minded people, and that gives me the fill up then to say, hey, there's other lunatics out there like me. I know you did a great interview with Joe from Sub Garbage Man, and that guy's a huge inspiration.
Well, I was going to mention him, actually. That was episode 36. I've got it down in notes because you strike me as having quite a few similarities with him, and particularly what you said about keeping it light, because no one likes to be shamed, and it's not a good way of influencing people, but featuring some of the things that you've found and providing that positive example is such an important thing. So you've cleared some pretty weird stuff, haven't you, from the rivers?
Yes, absolutely. Nearly everything. So kind of, the usuals, as I say, the bottles, the cans, everything else, the sanitary products. So I've kind of a big bugbear about them as well. But we have, so the city has a main sewerage plant down on the harbour, and to be fair to it does its job very well. But things like cotton buds, the plastic sticks from cotton buds, they go through it. They don't get caught in the filtration system. So that's not necessarily an issue for the wastewater treatment plant. It's an issue for the people flushing them down the toilet. Clean Coast did a great program here called the Think Before You Flush campaign, which was great because it said, there's only 3 things that should go down the toilet, and they all begin with P. And one of them's paper, which is true. And look, I'll put my hands up as well when I, it's education as well. So before I kind of learned about microplastics and all these things, I was completely oblivious to them. You kind of think, what goes in the bin or what goes down the toilet or wherever is a way, but it's not a way. And, when you're out on the water and you see it coming back, you're going, okay, this system is broken, we need to do something about it. And obviously there's a lot of things we can do, and there's a lot of things that should be done at the highest levels. And to me, they are the more important things, but we need to maybe start campaigning or lobbying the people at the higher levels to take action. I don't want to get too political now again on it, but there's a lot of pushback on kind of individual actions, which are necessary. But I think Paul Hawkins said that if everybody does a little, then we get a little done. But what we need is deposit return schemes, these kind of major campaigns to run to stop these plastic bottles coming back and entering the environment.
And this is where shame maybe works, where it comes to dealing with companies. And you mentioned Plastic Patrol. I know you've done a bit of work with Lizzie Carr. Just explain to us a little bit about how it works and and why it's different to the normal sort of clear up type schemes?
Yes, as I say, I took inspiration from Lizzie and what she's done, and the events that they organise through, I think it's called Planet Patrol now, actually. Again, I'm open to correction on that. But, so organised cleanups where the paddle boards, the paddles, everything is provided, the bins, the pickers, is kind of something that I toyed around with here as well, because there is nothing like that here. So that's kind of why I started getting, the Clean Coast thing, and then getting the instructor qualification as well, because I don't know what it's like in the UK, but the insurance issues here are huge. So I was looking at the Planet Patrol model and maybe thinking of offering that to corporations, as maybe team building or CSR or whatever umbrella they want to put it under, where we take a team out and they'll roll up their sleeves, go out and paddle boards and pick stuff up. So it's something that could still happen. I know Lizzie's taking it beyond the UK now, I think. I can't remember what country, but she's moving it out, which is great. I know she's done kind of awareness paddles as well on the Hudson in New York and stuff. So
it's a fantastic initiative, and you don't have to do it just with a structured paddle. And this is the thing that I think so clever about the model that she's got, which is the Patrol app, where you can log all of your finds there. You can take a photo. So while it's brilliant to clear these things off the beach or off the river, or even out of your park, because you can do it there as well, it's much better to take a couple of minutes, take a photo of it, record what it is that you found. And then what happens is Plastic Patrol put that all together through a collation, and they use that information to leverage change on a slightly bigger level, which is a fantastic initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have something similar here called Open Litter Map, which is, not, as you say, not just waterways. You can do it on the street, and it logs everything, I believe, in real time, and it's totally open source then, so anyone can take the information from it, whether it's academic or as you say, maybe campaigning or lobbying. It's a great way of doing it because it's actual statistical evidence of different types of litter as well.
One of the interesting things about water pollution is it goes down to that very micro level. And obviously plastics is a big thing, and quite rightly has a lot of focus. But I was speaking to a marine biologist from University of Portsmouth who was talking about disposal of pharmaceuticals. So that's another thing which really does need to be highlighted. I'm not sure, and wouldn't put you on the spot by asking you as to whether or not pharmacists in Ireland have a disposal programme for that. But just in terms of disposing of pharmaceuticals by flushing them down the loo, there is an effect which is to pollute marine life and affect their behaviour. So, it's important to focus on every level of the stuff. And I think that comes back to your 3 Ps.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a nice way of putting it, that it's covered under that as well. But, as you say, it's the same here. Pharmacists will take back your out of date, whatever it is, prescriptions. And it's vital. And again, it's probably one of those educational things as well. In fairness, my wife was always saying to me that, a lot of people just don't know this. And I'm, in the heat of the moment, I'm like, oh, that's not a defense. But it actually is, because, I was that person as well for various other things. And there needs to be campaigns about this, because as you say, if that stuff gets out into the environment, it's going to come back on us eventually. And I hate that that's the drum that has to be beaten for people to take action. Like even the microplastics, it wasn't a shock until people found that, oh, actually, wait, it's in our food. It was an issue long before then, but wait, this actually affects me now. Maybe I'll start keeping an eye on this, and the pharmaceutical and the pharmaceutical stuff, antibiotic issues as well, which are going to be huge, and we are going to pay for that as well. Just being too free with antibiotics in general, and then flushing them down the toilet is terrible.
Just to sort of cover a slightly more cheerful subject,
yes.
Cork and paddling Cork. I mean, obviously there is an array of fantastic places to eat, and certainly I know to drink in that area. Just tell us a little bit about some of your favourite routes around Cork and what sort of things you see when you're paddling around the city and in the county.
Yeah, I suppose, I'm definitely biased because I'm from Cork, and apparently it's a condition known as Corkness, right? That there's a superiority complex. I'm not sure that exists at all, but so I'm told. So yeah, I mean, we are very, very lucky here. We're the biggest county in Ireland as well, so we have a lot of coastline. We have kind of a southern and a west, so it's a southwest facing coastline, so we kind of get it all. But we have inland waterways and lakes that are amazing as well. So as I say, I'm only scratching the surface on most of it, but there's something for everyone. I love, because it's easiest for me, I love paddling around the city and seeing the reactions from people up on the quays. Like we do a thing roughly every month where, I don't know if you know Cork City, but it's built in a marsh, and basically the city centre is an island. So you can actually, if you get the tides right and the flow from the dam, you can paddle all around the island, do a full lap of it. It's about 7 kilometres. Yeah, so you have to get the timing right to get under the bridges, so there's enough water to get under the bridges, but not too much water that you can fit under the bridges, and enough water that you can get over the weirs. But it's amazing. We do it with kayakers and basically anyone who wants to. And we did it last weekend, 2 weekends ago, and there was 40 boats on it. It was amazing. So I love doing that. Yeah, back to the surfing. I just the beach is kind of from kind of Kinsale west. They're just amazing. They're usually not too crowded in terms of the lineup. But even I've discovered recently, as I'm getting more adventurous, even East Cork, as you head to Waterford, there's some lovely beaches there again with good swells. They might need a bit more of an easterly swell, but it happens every now and then, and it's great. The exploring ones, as I say, the trip around the Old Head is amazing. I'm very fortunate as well that we spent our summers down in West Cork and Crookhaven, Barley Cove area, which has it all again, even in a small area. So there's a lovely sheltered harbour there that you can paddle around, and it's a great place to learn. You can go outside that then and go through sea caves and see cliffs and see basically the wild Atlantic away from the water. And then there's 2 beaches there as well that have great surf whenever the swell rolls in. And if you get really adventurous, I haven't done it yet, but it's been known. I know 2 paddlers who've paddled around the Fascinet lighthouse as well, which is an incredible paddle.
Oh, that's incredible. And where's Riley's? Because that's a well-known wave. I'm probably more like you, sort of shoulder height is about enough for me. Whereabouts is that? Because that's a legendary break, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe that's in Clare. I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, but I believe it's in Clare there around the Cliffs of Moher there under the cliffs. Is that Aileen's? I think there's similar waves anyway. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff I'd like to watch from a boat or maybe a video.
Quite right. That sounds absolutely fantastic. What an amazing location to paddle. Just one final question, and it's one that tends to obsess tourers in the UK, which is around inland waterways and launch fees and all of that sort of stuff. What's the situation in terms of Irish rivers and estuaries and inland water in terms of licenses and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so again, compared to what you guys have there, we are incredibly lucky here. It was only through social media that I realised that you actually need a licence on certain waters in the UK to paddle. There's no such thing here. All of the rivers and lakes are public land, if you like, so anyone can go out in them. There are a few reservoirs I know that are run by the electricity supply board, so they're grey areas. I don't think it's you're permitted to paddle on them, especially around the dams and the intakes and what have you. But everywhere else is fair game. There's different authorities. Like in Cork here, it's the Port of Cork are responsible for the harbour, and then when it gets up to the city, it's the city council beyond that. But to be honest with you, there's no rules. I mean, there's a speed limit of 6 knots. If you're doing over that, I congratulate you on a paddleboard.
I'm beginning to suspect that we might be in the minority in the UK. But I shall continue my investigations. David, we connected quite some time ago, so it's fantastic to actually get to speak. Really appreciate your time today. If people wanted to find out more about you, where would they go? Yeah,
it's the beauty of social media. So you'll find me on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram under Subowti, so Subowti, completely made up word.
Brilliant, excellent, and links in the show notes. Thanks so much, Dave. Hopefully see you on the waters of Cork in the not too distant future.
Yeah, thanks again, Simon, and it's great to talk to you after all these years, all right?
Well, thank you for listening, and I hope, like me, you've now got County Cork solidly on your bucket list. Thanks to Dave for the chat, and as ever, we've got all of the links in the show notes. So that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the water.